Hello and welcome back to the channel. We are now into the third week of 2024 and on to the third episode of Plums and Peaches. Although there was no Test cricket this week, it will start soon. But there has been plenty of white ball cricket for us to discuss. There have been some big red ball selection calls. And once again, to go through it all with us, our resident Safa, Lucas Smith. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, mate. How are you?
I'm all right, actually. Long, tiring day of work, but we carry on. So actually, we'll kick off down under the West Indies tour of Australia. Will begin after Pakistan have been spanked 3-0 there, as most teams do in Australia, unless you're India, of course. There's going to be two Test matches, but someone that won't be there is David Warner, as we spoke about last week. But the question was always who's going to replace him. Now, at the beginning, it was thought, right, it's either Renshaw or Cameron Bancroft. And they both have relatively similar records over the past 18 months. Bancroft has 1,731 runs at 46, and Renshaw has 1,566 runs at 52 in first class cricket. But everyone keeps saying that Renshaw shouldn't have been there and Bancroft got robbed somehow because Renshaw got selected. Maybe it has something to do with the 3 years before that where Bancroft apparently averaged more, but you also called for Bancroft to be in that. So, what's your take on it all?
I mean, look, it's not necessarily a robbery because, like you say, statistically in the last 18 months,
Yeah.
Renshaw has been better. But I did a bit more of a dive into that actually, just to see
Mm.
how reliable those stats were. And actually, since the beginning, well, the season after Bancroft got dropped, so the 2020 to 2021 season
Okay.
in Shield cricket. Since then, Bancroft has scored 2,637 runs at 49.7,
Okay.
and Renshaw just just I say, but
Yeah.
1,568 runs at 40.2. So I can kind of see the argument in Shield cricket, but like you said, in recent times, Renshaw has the better statistics, even though he's played only 6 few innings. But look, at the end of the day, they've not gone for either of them, which is a little bit surprising, I've got to say.
Yeah, that was weird. So, essentially, before we get on to who's actually going to open, um, essentially Matthew Renshaw was picked because his recent record in the last 18 months was better in Australia than Cameron Bancroft, even though Bancroft was better in the past few years overall, right?
Well, you say that. I think so. The post that Cricinfo put out the other day was all first class cricket, so that doesn't
Okay.
just kind of entail Shield cricket. But actually,
Yeah.
in Shield cricket, I believe Cameron Bancroft was the top run scorer last season with 945 runs at
Okay.
56. And this season, he's also at the top with, I think, another 500 at 50 plus. So recent, even newer statistics would actually suggest that Bancroft does deserve to be in there ahead of Renshaw. But look,
I think possibly it might just be obviously Renshaw bats absolutely nothing like David Warner, but they are both left-handers, which might have something to do with it. But some people have claimed, and by some people I mean ex-Aussie player Tom Moody, he said that Bancroft might not have been picked because obviously despite his apparent superior domestic record, there's issues in the dressing room possibly about obviously Bancroft being one of the main three involved in Sandpaper Gate. Do you think that had any issue with Bancroft in the dressing room and maybe people not wanting him there because um, George Bailey, who's the chief selector, came out and completely squashed those rumours, saying no chance. But what do you think?
I think, like you said, I mean, the Australian camp has made it very clear, George Bailey included, that what has happened with Sandpaper Gate and all that stuff was nothing to do with the selection of this team. Which I look, I completely trust Cricket Australia with that call. I mean, obviously Bancroft has been fantastic these last few years and probably does deserve a call up. But I mean, look, when you got Warner and Khawaja, I know Warner's obviously been coming off the back of the end of his career, but still pretty decent record in that. And Khawaja's been arguably the best opener in the world for the last 2 or 3 years. So, I mean, incredibly hard to break in. And like I've always said on this podcast, I do feel sorry for Bancroft, not just because he's not been being picked again, but because I thought too much of the blame was put on him during Sandpapergate, and I think that could have potentially tarnished his reputation and his career.
Yeah, that does make sense. I also trust Cricket Australia to be professional enough not to have these sort of issues about other stuff getting involved. And clearly, when it came to Warner and Smith, although Warner and Smith are by far in a different caliber of player, that the Sandpapergate didn't really affect too much of dressing room issues in the future or anything like that, really, unless you're Mitch Johnson, of course. That's a different problem. But he's not in the dressing room anymore, so that's fine. But then again, as we said, none of this actually matters because neither of them are going to be opening. It's going to be Stephen Smith, and that means Cameron Green, the wrong Cameron or the right Cameron, whichever way you want to put it, is going to be batting at 4. So essentially, Australia are going to have their best 6 batters batting the top 6 one way or another. And I'll give you some numbers here. So Cameron Green will now bat at 4 because in his 15 first-class innings there, he has 1,400 runs at 64 with 400 and a top score of 251, which was one of the reasons Smith chose to give himself up to opening so that Green could bat in his preferred position at 4 rather than 6. And another reason Smith agreed to open was what he essentially said was he basically got bored because Labuschagne, Khawaja and Warner bat for too long, and Smith doesn't like waiting to bat because he gets all nervous and just loses energy on that. But I'll give you some numbers also on Smith at number 3, which is the closest he's ever batted to opening because he's never opened in his professional career, I think, or in first-class cricket at least. So at 3, Smith has 3,300 runs at an average of 62. So opening shouldn't be an issue. And hear this, Michael Clark said Smith is so good that in 12 months he'll be the best opener in the world, and he might even break Brian Lara's record of 400. So it is the ex-Aussie skipper taking it too far, or does he genuinely have some genuine claims there?
Have you seen Michael Clark as well? He looks a little bit worse for wear, doesn't he? He's only been out of the game 5-6 years.
But I haven't.
He's not looking in the best state. I'll be completely honest.
Right, he can enjoy himself. He's
exactly.
One of the things.
Look, I think he might have been over-egging it just a little bit with that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not as well. Steve Smith's probably going to go and prove me wrong now and absolutely obliterate that. But look, I mean, he's such a class act. I mean, he's the best Test player of this generation. I don't think there's much debate about that. He's just been on top for so long, and I just don't see. I think he's had a bit of a quiet patch in the last year or so. I think this is his way to kind of reinvent himself and just find that hunger again. I feel like you said, he just loves batting so much. He said on multiple occasions how he hates watching people bat.
He just wants to do it himself.
Exactly. So I can't see how this doesn't work. I think it's a very good and intelligent move by Australia.
And him
obviously
himself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he said he hinted at it during the Ashes last year, and they were
and people thought he was joking.
Changing room. Yeah,
like, why would you move from 4? You're so good then. He's like, actually, I can be even better opening.
Exactly. And I mean, it just makes sense. Like you said, Green's record at number 4 in Shield cricket is incredible. I mean, I think you said averages 6. Well, I've got it here. Averages 65 or shade over that at 4 in his last 24 Shield innings at 4. And then actually he's in pretty good form in terms of Shield cricket. His last 38 runs, he's averaged just a touch over 66. I mean, it just makes perfect sense. And like you said, Australia's a pretty daunting proposition, whether they've got their best 6 batsmen or not. And when they do, I got to say, I don't hold much hope for the West Indies, unfortunately.
Yeah, but what you said, you couldn't see much ways of it going wrong, and to be honest, neither do I. But there has been a lot of calls about Smith with his slightly front on batting stance could struggle with the new ball outside off, which I honestly I'm not buying it. I've seen him in England smack the swinging dukes literally everywhere. And do you know what I think? So normally when Smith bats, like bowlers just go leg side trap or bowl short. Now they're not going to do that with a brand new cherry and waste it. They're just going to bowl in his slot, which is full and around off stump, and he's basically going to whack it everywhere. But even if this like kind of does go a bit wrong, Australia have promised that this is not like a quick fix. This is something they're trying to stick to. And another interesting thing about this is Smith is in a position of his career where a lot of players have obviously he's what, how old is he now? 33, something like that.
Oh, a bit 34, 35.
Yeah, so just gone or coming to the end of his peak or just past his peak. A lot of players here now is where their careers begin to recline a bit. Their averages start to drop, and then the memory of them being what wasn't a player who averages 57, 58, 60, and those numbers end up reclining to 52, 53, which is still outstanding, but they get remembered slightly different, which is really interesting because now that Smith has essentially decided, I'm going to take on this new challenge so late into my career, when he could easily continue batting at 4, dominate, and be remembered as like a GOAT. But now that he's taken this challenge, do you think it puts him in a, if it comes off successful, do you think it puts him even further up in that talk of like the best Test batters since Bradman, basically?
Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, like you said, average. Look, there's been so many players throughout the history of the game who have averaged so highly throughout their career, and like you said, just fallen off towards the end. Great example of that is Ricky Ponting. You know, averaged around 60 for most of his career, and then last year and a half or so kind of fell off. But to be perfectly honest, I think Steve Smith just got a bit bored and
Basically.
thought, I'll have a go at opening. I'll still bang runs. What's the difference? I can bat a bit longer now as well because I don't have them blokes up top.
Pray for all the Test bowlers in the next like 10 years, just Steve, or the next however long Smith plays for. Just imagine him going, yeah, I'm actually bored of this many runs. I want even more. Honestly, I'd be absolutely terrified. But the best part about all of this was now that he's the Australian opener, he went to the Australian Open and smacked Novak Djokovic over extra cover for 6. Do you see any of that?
Yeah, I did actually.
Yeah, but Novak can't actually bat.
No,
apparently.
wow. He's got the big heave ho, but I mean, he does
the moo to cow.
Yeah, exactly. It's the go-to shot. None more so than for me.
Go on then. We'll move on swiftly. There's obviously there was some actual Red Bull stuff on this week. If you like watching Pakistan's disgraceful attempt at making a first-class system, or in fact, if you like watching Ranji Trophy, where Bhuvaneshwar Kumar got 8 for 41 in his first-class game since like 2018, which is I think a Test match in England. But aside from that, we were all hoping to get some cracking SAT20, but it didn't actually start like that, did it? There was a bit of rain, so we had to wait till the second game for cricket to actually get underway in this big competition as it is nowadays. So we'll start off with MI Cape Town, who batted first. They got 207. Ryan Rickelton is how you say
it. We'll go with it. It will do for now.
He got 87 from 51. Pollard smacked 31 off 14. And then the second innings, Klaassen got 85 from 35, and Durban Supergiants won by the DLS. A couple of days later, MI Cape Town decided that 207 was enough. They're going to get even more. Rassi smacked 100 of 47 balls or whatever. Rickelton got 98, still missed out on his time. Poor lad. And they defended it easily. But Rickelton has looked all right, hasn't he, Lucas? Do you think there's any space for him in this strong Safa white ball lineup, or do you think he'll have to just wait his turn a bit longer?
Well, I think there's a position that's opened up just recently, actually, up top with De Kock going, and I've actually seen quite a few TikToks and whatnot of the similarities.
The GM bat,
you know, just the kind of
bottom hand nature. There's some of the similar shots. I see what you mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could look. I mean, Archie's been banging on about why he's not in the Test team, and I couldn't agree more. I think he deserves a run in there as well. I mean, average of 53 in first class cricket, mid 40s in list A. I mean, the bloke's 28 or 27, 28. I mean, he's got to get in there at some point. He's just a class act, honestly. I don't know how he's not broken in.
Fairs. And another person who got runs in this white ball game and who seems to basically almost get runs very fast for South Africa with a white ball is Heinrich Klaassen, who can now focus solely on white ball cricket because he decided 4 test matches was enough for him. Why do you think he retired? And specifically, how important do you think Klaassen's going to be going forward for South Africa in all white ball cricket, and especially the T20 World Cup in the West Indies?
I think that I'm not particularly surprised. We mentioned this actually on the Test match special with Archie. You know, I think we're gonna see a fair few of these players in their early to mid 30s, kind of making a decision to step away from the red ball game, whether that be for financial reasons or just wanting to prolong their careers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think like I said, I'm not surprised. And look, he's been an incredible find in the last 3, 4, 5 years for South Africa, and he's just like a bullet train. I don't see him stopping anytime soon. He's a fantastic player for me, and actually Kevin Peterson's also alluded to this. For me, he's the best player of spin in the world.
White ball player of spin, you mean?
Yeah. He's got everything: front foot, back foot. Like, genuinely, at this point in time, I don't think there's a more feared batsman to bowl to in world cricket.
As a spinner, especially.
Absolutely. He's so destructive, you know. I mean, fantastic player. He's going to be a huge asset for South Africa in this upcoming T20 World Cup. And hopefully, I'm not going to speak too soon, but
yeah, we'll wait till June for that. Anyways, staying on Klaassen, some of like the best spinners in the world, your likes of Adil Rashid Khan, have spoken about how they find it really hard to bowl to him because he can essentially hit the same length for 6, 2 different places. He either rocks back, hooks you over cow, or wallops you down your ground. But I literally when he got his 175 at Centurion, was it? Yeah, it was nuts because I was honestly looking at him, and Adam Zampa was one of the best bowlers at the World Cup by far. He was standout above all other spinners except maybe Kuldeep Yadav. Like, Zampa was one of the main reasons Australia won the tournament or even got to the final in the first place. And when he was bowling to Klaassen, I honestly looked at him and think, how on earth can Zampa bowl a ball here that doesn't go for 6? Because every time he dragged his length back, it went for 6 over cow. And every time he bowled remotely good length or full, it went for 6, like long on, long off, or down the ground. And it's genuinely terrifying when Klaassen's on form because you basically can't bowl to him. But there's another big hitter I want to talk about, Kyron Pollard, who obviously he got a quick fire 30 off 14 or whatever. But that's a very common sight now in the T20 world, and it's a very common sight specifically for any Mumbai team because Pollard is one of the many players who plays for the same franchise but in different leagues. So the MI Cape Town, I think he's the normal Mumbai Indians coach now, doesn't play there anymore. And he plays for MI New York. And a couple of other players like Andre Russell and Sunil Narayan basically do the same for the Knight Riders franchise in the Trinbago Knight Riders, in the USA leagues and Abu Dhabi and whatnot. But do you think a lot more players will end up becoming like this, where they stick with one franchise in many leagues and essentially have a 12-month year-round contract with them?
Well, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's actually been they've been looking to implement sort of central contracts for franchises, and I mean, I don't particularly see a problem with it as long as it doesn't interfere with international cricket.
So that's the fear, though.
You know, that obviously, like you said, is the fear. That is the last thing purists want, anyways.
Yeah.
Boring old purists.
Boring old
anyway. But yeah, look, I, like I said, I don't see a problem with it. I think we're going to start to see it more and more, just for franchises to be able to retain players. You know, and I certainly think the players will be accepting them with the amount of money that will be offered for some of them.
do you think that also it's a lot easier for the players to be with one franchise all year round, where it's consistent and they know that they're going to have a job come this time of year? They're going to have this window. They will be in a league because they're with the same franchise all year round, instead of going month by month looking for a new contract at a different franchise, possibly in a different team. Do you think it can work both ways, where it doesn't just help the players financially, but just gives them a bit more consistency, as well as giving the franchises more control over players that essentially currently they don't actually own?
Absolutely. I think you look at, I mean, yeah, it's certainly the amount of stability that would offer players. I know obviously these tournaments are never in the same country, but
Yeah,
like being in a franchise provides, I'm sure, a certain kind of culture and
they just know how to build.
togetherness. Exactly. You
Mhm.
know, that's how you kind of build the strongest teams, really, by being able to bond and be able to understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. And I know obviously some of these players won't be signing these contracts, but having that kind of core group of players will, without a doubt, help these teams compete
Fair,
better.
fair enough. Last week you made what seemed at the time an outrageous claim that South Africa is the best place for cricket or Test cricket. Did you say Test cricket or cricket in general?
I think I said Test cricket.
All right, but it is a pretty good place to play cricket. And to be fair, you were quite close to being right there, because watching the SAT20, just in a weird way, it feels right, because there's 6 teams, so there's not too many teams. It's easy to follow, and the grounds are like lovely. They're open. They got grass banks, so it's almost attendances could be similar to the Big Bash, like 18,000, 15,000, because the grounds are a bit more grass banks and structured differently. It feels more full and more vibrant, and it doesn't feel as empty. And obviously, South Africa have always had and always will have an abundance of talent and good white ball players, good red ball players, just really good cricketers. But they've never really had a platform to showcase it, like the IPL or the PSL or whatever. And like I can see now why Cricket South Africa might have tried so hard to keep hold of their main players for this tournament, because they want it to be a big thing. So should we be apologising to Cricket South Africa now? Because the SAT20 seems like a pretty, so far, I'm not going to say anything yet, but so far it seems like a pretty good tournament.
Look, I couldn't agree more with some of the stuff you said there. The entertainment it's already provided, it's been fantastic, really. I mean, not just for the economy. You see the amount of like youngsters in the crowds watching on,
Full
and
crowd.
like you said, full crowds, and just being able to see their favorite players is certainly something that will inspire
Even the
them.
new players are like, there's a lot of really
Exactly.
good ones coming through that you wouldn't normally realise unless, there's a league to show them in.
Look, I mean, you know this. I've been heavily critical of the SA20, but I have to say, so far already, and it's only been 7 games, but 6 I think have actually been
Yeah.
played because the rained off. But the impact it already seems to have had in South Africa just looks brilliant, and I can see why Cricket South Africa were fighting so hard
Yeah.
to keep their main players, but I still
Yeah.
look.
I think
I
we
still feel
yeah,
like more could have been done to facilitate both the Test team and the SA20.
I agree. You can really see Cricket South Africa's side of the argument here, but we were never in doubt of cricket's, like the SAT20, because we had it last year and we knew it was going to be good. It was always just the fear of what happens to the Test game, not why they're doing it for a useless tournament. Unless you're Archie, he just hates this stuff. But even he liked it, kind of. He said it would almost be the perfect like T20 competition if it just wasn't owned by franchises. If they could call it just Durban and not Durban Super Giants or whatever. But anyways, we'll move on. Yeah,
Unfortunately. I mean, that's just
how the money
sponsoring and
works.
stuff.
Yeah,
Exactly. And do you know what?
go on.
Look, at the end of the day, I didn't actually realize this when we did it a couple of podcasts ago when we were talking about why cricket South Africa did this, but actually South Africa are playing a fair amount of Test cricket this year.
Yeah.
So in the grand scheme of things, maybe sacrificing 2 Test matches isn't the biggest deal, but it is still disappointing.
Yeah, for a World Test Championship final spot, it could be crucial away to New Zealand. But anyway, from one form of Indian T20 cricket, we're going to move on to more Indian T20 cricket. The India versus Afghanistan series began. There's no Rashid Khan, who's still recovering from back surgery, but still, in the first game in Mohali, Afghanistan got 158 for 6. They chased it comfortably enough in the end. Shivam Dube got 60 from 40. India were steered to a 6-wicket win by him. And then the second game, India were chasing again. And Shivam Dube got 50 again, but this time from 22 balls, sorry. And India got over the line inside 16 overs comfortably. Do you think that this big left-hander, who hits a tall ball, is there space for him at the World Cup squad, or do you think India just have too many strong white ball players in that middle order? I
think you'd be asking a lot to give him a starting place. I think he could make the squad.
Mm-hmm.
He's an incredibly talented player. I mean, he's 30, believe it or not. He is quite old.
Yeah. In his prime.
Yeah, I mean, look, he was kind of pushed aside a little bit at RCB. And then obviously he's got his move to Chennai and done fantastically well for them. And now, I mean, he's just showcasing his talent for India. But to answer your question, I don't think there's a long-term future or place in that Indian team. Unfortunately, there's just too much to choose from, really. And I just don't see him being picked, especially with his age being taken into account. I think India are really going to prioritize bringing their youngsters through, the likes of Yashasvi Jaiswal. You know, I feel for him, but yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll nail down the spot.
I don't think he'll nail down the starting spot. Maybe a few more good performances, he might sneak into a squad, and then if you're in a squad at a World Cup, you know, anything can happen. But that wasn't the only T20 World Cup preparation going on. Pakistan began theirs at Eden Park against New Zealand. The Kiwis smacked their bowling everywhere. They got the highest T20 score ever. Anyone has scored against Pakistan. They got 226 for 8, and they made full use of the 50-meter straight boundaries at this basically what is essentially a football ground, because it's a rectangle, essentially a football ground or rugby ground or whatever, and the pitch is like that. So the straight boundaries are tiny, but the square boundaries are relatively normal. Not massive, but like considerable enough that are normal boundaries. But Pakistan decided they were going to bowl full and straight to Daryl Mitchell. Firstly, full and straight with 50-meter straight boundaries. Secondly, Daryl Mitchell is probably the best straight hitter of a cricket ball that is currently around. I've never seen someone hit the side screen with such consistency as Daryl Mitchell. But yeah, he ended up getting 61 from 27. Pakistan were consistent with their fielding standards. They dropped Williamson twice as he got 57. But someone who did take catches, Syam Ayub, who I was slating in the last podcast, he actually took 4 catches. So it proves he can catch, but only if the ball is white.
Yeah, and he's not in the slip corner.
And it's in the outfield. Anyway,
look,
I'll finish with this game first. Pakistan, they came out to bat. Babar and Rizwan were no more together because they want really fast batting, which is what happened because Syam Ayub hit, 27 from 8, and then he got a comical run out. Babar ended up batting with Rizwan anyway. Babar got 50 standard from 37 deliveries. Pakistan collapsed 130 for 3. They were all out in 12 overs. They were bundled out for 180 and they fell well short in the end. The second game was basically a copy of the same first game, but the Kiwis got a bit less, 194. This time, Finn Allen got the runs. Fakhar Zaman got 50 in the chase. Babar got another 50 again for once, which is nice to see him scoring runs in white ball cricket, but not with the red ball quite yet. Pakistan collapsed again from 97 for 2 to 173 all out. They fell well short. But on the bright side, there were some positives. Abbas Afridi, he bowled excellently. He got 3 for 34 in 4 overs on his debut, and he got 2 more poles in the second game. He got some big wickets like Finn Allen, Kane Williamson, and Glenn Phillips. And it seems like he's learnt a few tricks from. Do you know this? His uncle is also the bowling coach, Umar Gul, and he even has the same shirt number as him, the number 55. But what do you make of his performance in the side, and what do you make of Pakistan's T20s so far?
I mean, despite being 2-0 down, I've actually been quite impressed with Pakistan.
Really?
Well, yes, considering like there's a lot of maybe not of the overall performance, but there's certainly been quite a lot of positives as there was in the Test series against Australia. I mean, like you mentioned, Baba's scoring runs again. You know, like you said, a couple of
Albeit
big
kind
prosperous
of
talents. Yeah, but look, I think that's what Pakistan need. They need Babar Azam back in the runs, really. And then look, Saim Ayub, I've butchered that pronunciation completely.
No,
but
perfect.
look, I've heard some very high praise from Michael Vaughan, you know, saying he's going to be the next big thing in cricket.
He's played a bit as well, PSL, CPL.
And he's still so young. What is he, 21?
Early 20s. He won the CPL with the Guyana Warriors, I think.
Yeah,
he was one of their main players.
Massive talent. And then obviously Abbas Afridi, who's also like 22 and got a very good domestic records, average of 19 with the ball in the T20s. Yeah. But even in first class cricket, I know he's only played the 9 games, but 23 wickets at an average of 29 isn't bad. I think he can definitely play a big part in Pakistan's success, hopefully.
But
in the future.
Were talking about obviously these guys have played PSL, and the PSL is doing well in bringing through these vast resources of like specifically T20 talent. Pakistan have a lot of good T20 resources in terms of batters and bowlers, fast bowlers, just not quite yet spinners because the pitches are that flat. But the thing is, with the amount of runs from PSL batters that are mainly all top order batters, Pakistan have ended up with kind of a mix of either basically they've either got openers, guys who will score runs only at the top order. That's the only place you can get their full potential, and hitters. They don't really have middle order batsmen. So essentially, their top 4 in the last game were 4 openers: Babar Rizwan, Saim Ayub, and Fakhar Zaman. And another one, Muhammad Haris, probably should be in the squad, but they are, quote, resting a 21-year-old player whose only format is T20 for whatever reason. I don't know why. But what I'm trying to get to is the whole debate was they broke up Babar and Rizwan's opening partnership, which is the most successful in T20 history, looking for more or faster runs being scored. But if we're going to bat Babar at 3 anyways, well, what's the point? Because they'll end up batting together anyways. Do you think Pakistan can get their house in order and somehow fix this, or are they forever going to be the vibes team who can really only win when things feel good?
Look, I don't think it's necessarily a negative thing. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe Saim Ayub is an opener.
He is.
You know, I think, and Babar obviously bats, I think 3 in ODI cricket and maybe 4 in Test cricket. You know, I don't think it's when you've got such 3 high quality players, I don't think it really matters too much in which order you play them. You're going to get runs out of that either way. You know, obviously strike rate is an issue, but I mean, look at Babar's strike rate. I think he was above 150 in the second game, and I think the first game was quite similar actually, maybe a bit lower. Hang on. No, 160. Like you know,
that's all right.
I don't think strike rate's too much of a concern. I mean, like I said, they're 3 supremely talented players, and then you've not even got Mohammed Harris in the team, who looks a fantastic act, really. Look, I think there's certainly a lot of promise there, as there often always is with Pakistan, and if they can just find that formula and get into like a winning habit, which despite their fantastic team, they clearly struggle to do, and fantastic talent. I think if they can do that, they'll certainly be a force to be reckoned with, and there's no reason why they can't go on and win this year's World Cup.
That might be a bit of a stretch, but then again, with Pakistan, you never know, because the amount of T20 resources they have, they just need to find some. I guess that's why we have all of these warm-up games or prep, so you can find a combination that works. They've fiddled around with a lot of things: bowlers, batters, and fielders. I hope and find something that works. And eventually, with Pakistan, all they need to do is get on a little bit of a roll, and it'll be quite dangerous. But quite easily, it could all go south because one debutant, obviously Abbas Afridi done quite well, but the other one, Ahmed Jamal, who we've heard quite a lot of recently because of his exploits in red ball cricket, but turns out he's not actually good at white ball cricket or T20s at least, because throughout his career he's gone at over tens in like all his T20 bowling. Yet still he was picked. So in the first game he went for 56 in his 4 overs, and in the second game he went for 42 from his four, which is like loads. And I don't really know why they picked him, because I get it, he's on like good form, but that's a completely different format. It's not really got much to do with a white ball. And Osama Mir was similar. He didn't really do much. He just kept missing his line and length and got whacked everywhere. So, do you think that there's a space for Ahmed Jamal in the side, or should they have gone for get me like T20 specialists like Zaman Khan, who's played well recently in the Big Bash, and even Mohammad Wasim, who's also in the squad?
I think, like I said, they just need to not necessarily keep chopping and changing, but really implementing the changes that they think are the right ones. And like I said, the amount of talent they have, there's no reason why they can't be a fantastically successful team. And there's so much talent there. As soon as they find that, I've got no concerns with Pakistan. As soon as they find that kind of, that kind of team that they can just rely on day in or game in, game out, I think that'll be fine.
Fairs. They can only hope at this point. But move on to some.
And actually, just to add to that, I mean, at the end of the day, it is so hard to be consistent at T20 cricket. There's so much luck involved, regardless of the team that you pick, regardless of how consistently your players perform. There's always the chance that you get outperformed, and at the end of the day, you can't do anything about that. So,
a bad spell of 5 balls or 6 balls can ruin your game, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it really is just hedging your bets as much as possible in one direction. But there was another Asian team in action this week. Sri Lanka were hosting Zimbabwe. Wanindu Hasaranga, first game back, first international match since August, and first game back from injury, gets a cheeky 7 for 19. Obviously, Sri Lanka won the series 2-0 at home. The first match of the 3 was washed out. Hasaranga got all 7 wickets with a googly. I don't know if you've seen the highlight, but literally he just kept bowling the googly and they kept getting out. I didn't see him bowl a single leg spinner at least. It's actually the 5th best bowling figures in men's ODI history. So he's behind fellow leggies Shahid Afridi, Rashid Khan, and fellow countryman Chavinder Vas's top spot. He got an 8 for or something. Kusal Mendes also got a 66 in this match, unbeaten. They were only chasing 97 though. But these 2 players in particular, Mendes and Hasaranga, how important do you think they'll be going forward for Sri Lanka? Because obviously Sri Lanka, they've got, including those 2, they've got good crop of young players like Madhushankar and Walalage. And it seems like Cricket World Cup 23 came a little bit early for them, but do you think they'll be better in the future and moving towards the 2027 World Cup in South Africa?
I don't see why not. I mean, Kusal Mendes is literally 28. He's approaching, if not in his peak years. That he's always been supremely talented. Potentially a little bit disappointing,
Definitely
from a statistical point of view. But there's no look. Yeah, quite a similar sort of player. But there's no reason he's starting to find that bit of consistency. We saw that in the World Cup. Obviously, he did tail off towards the end, but he provided us with a few glimpses of brilliance, as he always does. And Hasaranga's just one of, if not the best leg spinner in the world, fit leg spinner in the world at this current moment.
Rashid's injured before anyone says anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Look, I was, being an RCB fan, I was absolutely revolted when they didn't retain him. Just
doesn't matter, mate. You could get De Villiers back in the fight, and you still won't win anything.
Oh, I mean, you're not wrong. Back to Hasaranga though. I mean, it's just He's just got that knack of picking up wickets. It's a trait most, if not all, leg spinners have. But he's just consistent in those periods where he doesn't pick up wickets and doesn't allow, run score or a lot of run scoring opportunities like a lot of leg spinners do. He's just got that consistency to his game, and he's a fantastic player. He's only 26 still. I mean,
Is he?
him and Mendes are going to have a massive role to play in these next few years, and it's despite all the kind of doom and gloom over Sri Lankan cricket at this point in time, they've certainly got a bright future ahead should they kind of pave the way correctly.
Get their house in order, and who knows, the like 5% chance that Sri Lanka get their house in order. They'll definitely have a lot of good players. It just depends what they can do with it. But we'll end the episode where we started in Australia. The Big Bash knockouts, they start on Friday. There's still a couple of games left in the group stage, but they're all dead rubbers because the 4 teams participating have already been locked in. The Perth Scorchers, the Adelaide Strikers, the Brisbane Heat, and the Sydney Sixers. So I'll kick off by just telling everyone a little bit about the 4 teams and what we can expect from them and how they've been doing so far. So firstly, the Perth Scorchers. Their top order has been in great form, mainly Laurie Evans, who's been smacking it everywhere. Skipper Aaron Hardy, because I think it was Ashton Turner got injured. So Aaron Hardy's the skipper now. He's doing great. He's in great form. So is Josh Inglis. The seam bowling always does well, especially when they play at home. I think they're unbeaten there. Andrew Ty and the new wild thing, Lance Morris, is doing quite well. Have you seen any bit of him?
I have seen quite a bit of Lance Morris. I mean, he's not particularly young anymore. He's 25 still.
Yeah.
But he's been around the block a little bit, and he's a promising talent. I mean, he's coming into his peak years as a fast bowler now. I could certainly see him potentially breaking his way into that Australia Test team if once the likes of Hazelwood and Stark, who are all towards the twilight of their career, kind of go. Very, very good bowler. He's got everything. He's quick. He's got a good bumper. I mean, it's literally tailor-made for Australia, really.
Yeah, it helps that he's from Perth as well. But moving on to the next team, one of my favourites because of their opening pair of shorts, Matthew and Darcy Short. Do you know what I like to call them?
Archie would fit right in.
Yeah, I like to call them tall short and short short. Tall short for Matthew and short for Darcy. But they're not the only ones in good form. They've got a middle order of bald men who are hitting the ball insanely hard. Chris Lynn is smoking it everywhere. And Jake Weatherald, at the beginning of the tournament, I forgot he was playing. But in the past 2 games, he has whacked it so hard and so far. I honestly don't think I very rarely see someone hit a ball that clean. It's quite scary. But they're not the only side in form. Brisbane Heat, they've been immaculate all season. They've only lost 1 game, and they're top of the group stages. They'll be hard to watch. And then closing out is Sydney Sixers, who they're also firing well up top. James Vince has been in the runs, and so is Josh Philippi. So Lucas, tell me, are you still back in the Brisbane Heat for the title win, or have you changed your prediction based on the group stage so far?
I mean, from what I've seen, and given obviously losing this last group game could potentially have an impact with momentum, but they're the team to beat at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a home qualifier. I can see them going through to the final, and then obviously they have a little bit of a knack of potentially not turning up when it matters most. But I think there's certainly a sense of consistency and assurance with this team that there hasn't been with the Brisbane Heat team for quite a while. And yeah, I mean, I am going to stick with my original prediction. Obviously, the Scorchers are always going to be in amongst it, but
I still think the Scorchers might win because they basically always do. But I'm going to change the team who I want to see win. I want to see Adelaide Strikers win, mainly because I want to see tall short and short, and the shorts do well, and because there's enough. I really want to see Chris Lynn and like Jake Weatherald hit the winning runs. Both of them take their lids off their shining bald heads shining under the floodlights with the trophy. That would be great. But yeah, that's all we've got for this week. We'll be back next week with obviously some of the Australian Test series and more SAT20. But make sure you go on the channel, check out all the other videos we've done so far. I think we've got 6 now, or close. We should have 6. Yeah. They're obviously all on Spotify if you fancy just listening to them and not looking at our faces, which is understandable. But anyways, until next week, that's all we've got for now. Goodbye. See you later.
Take care. Thanks.